looking around for the therapeutics, the health modalities, and things we can do that have the greatest possible effects and benefits and the fewest side effects. Today's episode, I'm looking forward to sharing everything you need to know about light therapy, and not just your average house lights or the sunlight or even red light therapy, but everything you need to know about how the different parameters you can tweak, the type of light, the color, the spectrum, the rate at which it flickers, if it flickers at all, how these all impact your health, your performance, and your bioharmony. I'm your host, Nick Urban. Thanks for tuning in to the Mind Body Peak Performance podcast. Sharing this knowledge with us today is Scott Kennedy. Scott is a certified laser and light specialist and a health coach. In 2018, he started the first light therapy wellness center in New Jersey, where he met all kinds of clients from many different walks of life. As you'll hear in this episode, Scott's own journey began about 10 years ago when he went from being in the peak of his shape, running ultra marathons and boxing, to being completely sedentary. He began researching the power of light and started implementing it into his own life. Within about 4 months, his symptoms decreased over 80%. He's now back to doing all the things that he once did, and because of his own personal experience, Scott is now helping others get back to what they enjoy doing in life without pain and without pills. That's why he started his company, LightpathLED, which creates some of the best light therapy panels on the market and at a consumer-friendly price. As you'll learn in this episode, his panels are both more affordable and they are also the most feature-packed of any I've come across. I got mine several months ago in May of 2023, and it's been a staple in my routine ever since. The show notes to this episode will be at mindbodypeak.com/ and then the number 115. There you'll find all the resources and links to the things we mentioned in this episode. If you want to try some LightPath products yourself, Scott also hooked us up with a special. So if you use the code URBAN on checkout, that will unlock you a special discount on all the LightPath LED products. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation on all things light with Scott Kennedy. Scott Kennedy, welcome to Mind Body Peak Performance.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick.
I've been looking forward to this one because light is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I first talked about light therapy on the podcast back a while ago, a couple years ago, on episode number 5, and then on the near infrared spectrum more recently in, I think it was episode number 101. So we will pick up the conversation today and talk about both red light therapy and light in general and some of your background and how you got into this whole industry.
Sure. I started back in the dental field years ago in the military. And then when I got out, I got into doing dental hygiene. And then after I've, dealt with so many back, neck, wrist pains from repetitive work, I started doing more sales and training. So I was working with a laser company. So very high powered, $90,000 laser that would cut teeth instead of a drill. It would cut soft tissue instead of a scalpel. We'd use it for root canals. We'd use it for extractions. But the same laser that if I took and I put right here, I'd sizzle a hole right through the cheek. If I pulled it back, dispersed the energy over a larger area, we were seeing dramatic improvements in people with TMJ issues that could barely open, 3 minutes on either side, and just a giant difference. So whether it was that or how the laser was treating herpetic lesions or stimulating the lymphatics, the lymph nodes, we had a handful of doctors who really thought outside the box. So they were using it for, their father who had, shingles coming down, or their kid that had a sprained ankle, or their wife that had an infection. So, there's no school for light therapy. So I had to read, the research out there, which there's thousands of. And then I had to, find a few mentors, people that have been in the field. Dr. Nelson Marquina, who's down in Virginia, who's been in a physicist, and a chiropractor. So he's been doing lasers for 50 years. Kay out in Arizona, who's been doing photobiomodulation for 20, 30 years. So those are the people that I've really leaned on and taken their courses. And, my knowledge is a fraction of what they have. But that's really how I've gotten my start.
So I want to dig into that some more. You've already mentioned something that I don't usually differentiate, and that is the difference between light and lasers. But before we get into that side of things, first, what are the unusual or non negotiables you've done so far today for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony?
Oh, gosh, I haven't done anything for my health today. So what I've got planned today is usually like in the evenings I'll do my infrared sauna, which I love. Most of the time in the morning I get to my light. This morning was just a little bit too crazy. I also own a campground, so there's a lot of work to be done outside. So my go-tos are breath work. I love my Wim Hof. I love doing my light in the morning. I love if I've got time to do my infrared sauna in the evening. And then the things I just need to work on is my diet. My vices are the sugars and the carbs, and I tell you, they are tough to resist.
Well, we'll unpack some of that in a bit. But first, what is the difference between light and lasers? Can you give us some background on what you're talking about here?
Yeah. So we started photobiomodulation, also known as low level light or low level laser therapy, LLLT. It started with lasers back in the late 60s. So all of the studies from, starting back in 1968, all the way until about, somewhere in the 80s and 90s, it was all focused on laser. There was this thought that only lasers were going to be effective and LEDs were not. So a laser, we know a laser, we understand how they work, but what's most important is the wavelength that they produce. So whether that wavelength, whether it's in that red 600 to 700, whether it's in that near infrared 800 and to about 1100, 1200, whether that's coming from a laser or an LED, meaning light emitting diode, really doesn't matter. Slight differences, very slight. But as long as we've got the same wavelength, we've got similar power. We even can talk about similar pulsing. They're going to act very similar. So the great majority of, I'm not going to say great majority, but a good percentage of the research that's been done in the last 20 years are focusing on LED. And that's because it's affordable, where lasers are very expensive. It's safer, where you're not going to burn yourself like you potentially could with a higher powered laser. And we can put it in something like really big, like behind me, so you can get the entire body, where a laser is always going to be very spot treatment. So, I can put it here for a shoulder. I can put it here, but it's not going to cover the entire area.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what the commonly mentioned, what is it? Beam angle? Is that what it's called? What you look for in panels to see like how concentrated the light is?
Yeah, so the beam angle is going to be how focused. So if you were to take your normal flashlight and go outside, if it's a really focused beam angle, it's going to go far, but it's going to keep a smaller spot size. If you have a flashlight that can disperse, more like 60 or 90 degrees, that may be good if you need a big picture, but you're not trying to focus the light as far away. So a beam angle just means that if I'm away from that panel, more of that light is going to be focused in on me as opposed to lost to the sides.
Okay, that makes sense. How does it work in the body? I know there's a lot of talk about the mitochondria and cytochrome C oxidase. Are there any like easy to understand mechanisms behind light, and specifically red light, that you find to be the most interesting or important to cover?
Yeah, the problem is none of it's easy, and So it's a matter of, when I'm reading research, I can read the abstract, I can read the methods, I can read the results, I can read some of the, how they got to that point. But, the scientists like to outdo the other scientists and throw in a lot of big words. So
Yeah.
you've got to break it down to understand actually what's going on. If I were to really simplify it, if we think about photosynthesis with plants, plants take in light. That is their energy. From there, it acts almost the same as it does in our bodies. So our body takes in light, whether it's sunlight, which we know is extremely healthy for us, or we find the specific wavelengths of light from sunlight that are really positive to the body, and we exclude some of the UV that's not so good for us in larger quantities. So we find those specific wavelengths. So we're talking about red, near infrared, even blue certain times for acne or seasonal affective disorder. That light gets absorbed by our cells. Our cells then it's like a kickstart. It gets them to produce more ATP energy, which is, it's simply put, it's 90% of the energy that our bodies need daily. So that's really all it's doing. It does one thing, but it does it really, really well. And from there, the body can do, that cascade of effects, whether that's balancing hormones, reducing inflammation, increasing blood flow, increasing oxygen. A list goes on and on, but all we're really doing is getting the body to do what it should be doing. If we didn't have all the stress in the world, all the toxicities in the air, all the poor diets, lack of exercise, all those things.
And what you mentioned about increasing cellular energy, that might seem like a small thing. And if you already have plenty of physical or mental energy, it's less necessary. But the way I like to think about it is if the body is in an energy deficit, a cellular energy deficit, it must choose which bodily systems and processes to throttle to reduce their efficacy. And that can result in hampering your immune system, suboptimal hormones, reducing cognition, all kinds of things. So by making sure the body has ample energy, then you're giving it the ability to have all systems running optimally. Okay, so that's a brief rundown on how it works. Have you come across the research? I think it was by Arturo Haynes that was showing humans are, what is it? Photoheteroautotrophs, meaning we can absorb a certain percentage of our caloric needs, our energetic needs from the sun alone if we get ample pigments and vegetables and things like that into our diet.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
It's
Sounds
pretty interesting.
fascinating, though.
Yeah, so it underscores the need for light in our days and lifestyles. And people might look at red light therapy specifically and say, okay, this isn't natural. Like, you wouldn't actually get concentrated red light like this. Why is it necessary if we're not actually getting that concentrated red light in nature?
So if you think about it, like I'm in a northern climate, so 6-7 months out of the year, it's cold. Not only that, but I'm inhibited from being able to walk outside naked. Neighbors are going to call. There's going to be a problem with it. So I love the sunlight. I tell people, get out, particularly get that morning sunlight in. That a good 20-30 minutes before 10 o'clock is so healthy for you. But we live in a world where a lot of times that's just not possible, either because of where we're located in the world, what time of year it is, obviously our work schedule, and so on. So, like a lot of things, we find ways of hacking. Uh, so whether that's doing breath work, breath hold, whether that's doing fasting, whether that's doing infrared saunas, whether that's doing light, we're hacking because that's not the way we have normally been. But our cells are still way back with our ancestors when it was good for us to push ourselves with acute stresses, whether that was cold water or breath holding to get down to the bottom where the food was, or going 2 or 3 days without any food. So we're away from that, but our cells are still stuck way back there. So when we talk about getting light from LEDs or from lasers, we're focusing on those specific wavelengths, and we're focusing on a reasonable power that the body can still absorb, can still process, and we get all the benefits from that, even though it's going to be more powerful than those specific rays that we're getting from the sunlight.
Yeah, and I want to challenge you to reframe it as hacking, and instead looking at getting the adequate light that we require as bioharmonizing, really working with our biology to meet its necessities.
Yeah, I like that word better.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a brief overview of how it works. And then a lot of the panels and devices I've seen on the market are fairly similar, just basically advertising different power outputs. There's irradiance, as they call it. And one thing that I liked about yours when I got my hands on a panel is that you incorporate multiple wavelengths and also pulsation. Why did you choose to add both of those features?
So when you brought up irradiance is the power of it. Unfortunately, in our culture, power is everything. So marketing has somehow taken over with power. Like, we've got the most power out there, and that's not really what the body wants. The body does not want a whole lot of power at once. The body likes a relatively specific amount of power over a longer period of time. There's always, with any kind of product, particularly ones that aren't, they're not obvious to people when we talk about parameters, because we don't know enough about, the average person doesn't know enough about light to go, oh no, that's BS. Oh no, that's what I want. So marketing can unfortunately dictate people's buying habits. I focus on science. Science really leads me to change what I'm doing. So let's just say my previous model panel had 5 wavelengths, 2 in the red, 3 in the near infrared. Enough research came out that said 810 wavelength penetrates the deepest. I said, there's no reason for me to have 2 other near infrared wavelengths. Let's just focus on the 810. With the red, it's a little bit of different absorption. So we're talking the lower 600s, that absorbs less than, say, the higher 600s. So I wanted to cover both of those bases. So I focused on 2 wavelengths in the red, 1 in the near infrared. So again, we talk about marketing, razors started off with 1 blade, 2 blades, 3 blades, 4 blades. I don't know if we're, you could probably buy a razor now with 20 blades. It gets to the point where it's just a little bit ridiculous. So science is what led me to go with that. As far as pulsing.
Wait, before you go on, is that because, like, when you have multiple different frequencies or wavelengths of red light, you are getting like a synergistic effect out of them?
When you are doing red and near infrared at the same time, was really fascinating is near infrared will penetrate a much deeper into the body. So red is just below skin because it gets absorbed in the blood. Where near infrared gets absorbed much further in, we're talking 1-2 inches. The red will piggyback on the near infrared and get pulled deeper into the body.
Wow.
So that's really, and so whether a company is doing red and near infrared together, a lot of times I don't know if they're cognizant of that fact that that's occurring, but we know red is good for superficial. Near infrared is good for deeper issues, bone, brain, organs, lymphatics, joints, cartilage, on and on. Those are the 2 most penetrating wavelengths, so best to combine them.
Okay. And beginner's question, but can you explain why we want to actually penetrate deeper into the body with light?
Yeah. The more cells we get, the better. So there's a systemic effect that we get with light. So let's say if I'm just shining light, if I put light right here on the forehead, only about 4% of light can actually get through the skin, the blood, the bone into the brain. But once that light hits that very front part of this brain, they see action occurring in real time in the deepest part of the brain. So that's the fascinating thing with light. So, or if I'm putting light right here, that light's going to create vasodilation. It's going to create angiogenesis, so new capillaries. So light's going to be effective here, but it's also going to be effective in this entire area. It also can help create gene expression. So we actually have genes talking, communicating with one another. We also have reactive oxygen species communicating with the mitochondria. So all kinds of things are going on. But ideally, you want to be able to get that light to those cells that need it. So if we can have both light getting to the cells that we need and have that systemic effect, we're just increasing our odds of getting positive outcomes.
Yeah. And another question I'm sure will come up is the difference between using these panels and just like being closer to your light bulbs in the house is that if you're using an LED, it's pretty much stripped of a lot of the beneficial wavelengths we need to balance with. Like it has usually really high concentrations of the blue spectrum, even if it doesn't actually look blue, even if it looks white or even yellow. For some reason, I've seen the spectrographs of a lot of common LEDs on the market, and they're pretty much blue dominant. And then also, even if you have like the incandescents or the halogens, which are much better light sources, you're not necessarily getting enough of the red throughout the day because we're not getting outside as much or our environment doesn't allow us to.
Hence why people say, stay away from LEDs. Well, they're talking about the LEDs that you use in your house that are white looking, but they have a lot of blue. And that blue can be bad for you in the evening. Blue isn't bad for you by any means. I mean, look outside. We see blue skies. We see blue mountains. We see blue water. There's a reason, because there's so much blue in our atmosphere from the sun. It's just that in the evening, we want our melatonin to go up. We want our serotonin to go down. But blue light will depress melatonin. So it makes it tougher to sleep. So having a lot of blue light around you, the computer screen, your phone, whatever's there, that can make sleep more difficult. But blue light in the morning is great because that suppresses the melatonin, increases the serotonin. Now, I could take any kind of light and I could put a red filter on it. So that red filter will block all the other rays and only allow that red to go through. In a technical sense, that could be used for, red light therapy. But the amount of energy that's coming out of that is so minuscule that it probably wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference health-wise.
Very wasteful too.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. And I mean, blue light gets unfairly demonized in the morning and even in the afternoon. If you go out around solar noon, 11 a.m., usually to like 3 p.m., blue is one of the dominant wavelengths. And it's important for your focus, your concentration, for like healthy cortisol rhythms. And then, yeah, like you said, it's mainly in the evening when you want to avoid overexposure to blue.
Yeah. And there's a reason why I put blue in certain panels of mine. So it's got blue, red, and near infrared. And that's because, I do a lot of work with military vets, and a lot of them, as well as a lot of the rest of us, we suffer from depression, anxiety, seasonal affective disorder. And if we can have that blue, red, near infrared first thing in the morning, if it could just take the edge off of some of the anxiety that so many people are dealing with.
Yeah, I also wish I could find a product just like that has a tiny bit of
UVB in it because it's in small amounts necessary to sulfate vitamin D and to like activate a lot of the biochemical processes that are key to, like, I guess in normal sun exposure, some of the reason that it's so healthy. But then if you add UVB into the mix, I think it becomes a medical device, and that adds a lot more complications.
Yeah, I've had to stay clear of that. I would totally agree with you. There are certain sad devices that will have UV in it, and as long as you're being smart and using it and being wise with it, it's great for you. But yes, as a manufacturer, I just had to choose to stay clear of that for all kinds of liability type issues.
Yeah. Okay, Scott. So when I was looking into red light therapy devices originally, I couldn't understand why someone would want to pulse red light because, as I saw it, that reduces the total power that you're receiving, that the irradiance that you're receiving. And then I realized that it might not be quite so simple. And one of the mechanisms that I saw is that when you pulse the light, your body's actually better able to absorb it. I don't know if that's true, but why did you decide to pursue pulsation?
So pulsing started out with lasers because they wanted to reduce the heat effect. So it had nothing to do with health benefits initially. So if we break up, like if you take a candle and we put our finger over it like this, we don't burn our finger. That's kind of what the purpose of pulsing was. Um, so it's called tissue relaxation. So it's just that split second where that tissue doesn't have that heat, and then it may get that heat again, and it's okay.
Well, it's a lot less than a split second, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, it could be with certain lasers. It could be, the laser could be on for literally a millionth or a billionth of a second, and then it could be off 99%
Oh,
of the time when we
wow.
get into like super pulsed, higher powered lasers. When we talk about like LEDs, they can generally be in that range of what we call a duty cycle, 30% to 80%. So mine are 50% duty cycle, meaning it's on half the time and it's off half the time. So no matter if it's pulsing one time a second or it's pulsing 10,000 times a second, it's always going to be on half the time. But yeah, you're right, because you would think, okay, well, it's only on half the time, so I'm not getting a 10-minute session. I'm really only getting 5 minutes. But what they found through the research, and they're still kind of trying to figure out the exact rationale for why it's working better. They know it works better. The few theories are nitric oxide dissociation, which it just means that nitric oxide wants to hang on to the mitochondria and it blocks it from working. So that light comes and hits it, knocks it off. Well, then it can reattach though. But with pulsing, it's constantly doing that. So every time it tries to attach, it's getting knocked off again. That's one. Um, Around the cells is the IWL. It's a water sheath. What they found is pulsed light makes that water sheet less viscous and allows more micronutrients through the ion channels to come in and feed the mitochondria, increasing ATP energy. The third is a resonance. So when we talk about brain waves, alpha, gamma, theta, delta, we know that they have a frequency to it. So what they found is light can help mimic that. So say 40 hertz on the forehead is really beneficial, and that's for the gamma. 10 is really good for alpha. 10 hertz on the stomach is really good for anxiety. So, and then there's a lot of other good research on pulsing showing increased healing with bone fractures, with wounds, with depression, anxiety. So there we know there's a lot more research that needs to be done, and they've got to really dive in there and just find those specific numbers that are really beneficial. But it's not easy to do. It's not like you can just hook it up to some meter and it'll say bing, 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 this is the best one. So a lot of the research is done on animals, on mice, where after they do the light on specific pulses, they'll euthanize the animal, and then they'll get in there and investigate. Okay, here's a gene expression that has upticked. Here's one that's downticked. Here's an interleukin that is increased, or something else has decreased. So they can really get in there and find exactly what's going on, like at a very micro cellular level.
So does this mean if I program my device to 40 hertz and sit in front of it with my head extra close, I can entrain myself into gamma dominant brainwave state more easily?
Yeah. So, they've got helmets, headgear that, they focus light on different areas of the brain. Because they know with certain types of people, let's say with people that have post-traumatic stress disorder, that they're much higher in certain brain wavelengths and lower than normal in other brain wavelengths. So the whole idea of that is brain entrainment, so that you can help to try to balance that, to make it what we would consider to be just a more balanced state, and reduce some of those depression, anxiety, PTSD type issues.
Yes, but can I just sit in front of my LightpathLED diesel line panel and do that, or do I need a special device to really put it to get enough power?
No, you don't have to worry about the power of it, because here's the thing: is no different than you listen to binaural beats. What's going on? We have sound frequency being transmitted into the ear, hitting the hairs, getting pulled into by the neurons. The neurons then change that to an electrical stimulus that gets transferred into the brain. So we know listening to binaural beats at 40 hertz is very positive for the brain. They're starting to realize that 40 hertz in the eyes is transferring, visual photons into electrical stimulation. So that's being transferred to the brain, and then we start to see all the benefits working from that. So no, you don't have to get super close to that. You just have to be at that normal, about 12 inches of distance, and that's going to be very, very beneficial. Again, you don't need to get everything through here, because you have your sinuses, you have your eyes. Literally, you can have it going up the nose, and like an intranasal device, you can actually have it going in through the mouth, and it's going to create all those positive effects for the brain.
That's cool. I wonder if I applied it, say, to my stomach, because of some of the systemic effects, maybe that'd be too low. Maybe like to my chest, if that would have some influence on gamma brainwaves.
They had recent research where they found like 90% of the the serotonin was being produced by the stomach area. So you can tell that there's such a big gut-brain connection, and so much of what's going on in here is caused by issues in the gut. So that's why it was fascinating when they did the study on, it was between 7 and 10 hertz pulses per second on the stomach area was reducing anxiety. So another good study in a scientist, can't think of his name, Australia. He took mice, he irradiated just the head area. And that was after he had given them some type of a chemical that created a very Parkinson's-like tremor. So he radiated just the head area. Tremors went down. And then he covered the head area with like a tinfoil, did just the neck down with light, had almost the same positive effects. So It just tells you the importance of the body and how we have to treat it like a system, as opposed to just the brain, just the heart, just the stomach, just a lymph node. It all works together.
Yeah, and the brain-gut axis is becoming more popular, and there's a bunch of other ones. There's a heart-brain axis, and I have a feeling they're going to discover deep, intricate connections between virtually every organ system in the brain.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we look at meridian points, these are things that have been practiced for, a few thousand years. But a lot of scientists said, no, it's just woo woo, whatever. Well, they've been able to show by actually putting, specific high powered light in one area on a meridian point, they can actually, with instruments, read where that light is coming out. So it's like fiber optics going through the body. So there's a reason why with photobiomodulation is also this called photopuncture. So instead of acupuncture, we're doing photopuncture. So we're doing it with light, with same specific wavelengths, pulsing as well, but in a nice little torch. So we can put it on specific areas. So with my wellness center, I would be treating people with aches and pains and whatever else. But one thing I noticed when I first started is, gosh, these people are so stressed out. They've got so much anxiety. So that's where I delved in and started taking courses on photopuncture. And so every client that came in, first thing I would do is I would treat the bladder meridians to help switch them from that stress, fight, or flight sympathetic to that more calming parasympathetic. So yeah, exactly what you're saying. It's amazing what we can do for the body once we understand it.
Beautiful. So you mentioned that near infrared is one of the wavelengths within your panels. And I know from my own research and experience that there are also infrared saunas and near infrared saunas. So is that the same or similar wavelength that you'd find in a near infrared sauna?
Yeah, here's the issue. So you may, it would be called like a full spectrum. And they may have one panel that is like your red. The problem is it is photobiomodulation. Here's the issue is, one, it's usually in a very difficult place, like it's where your shins are. So it's not hey, the shins are a great place to hit for stem cells, any long bone. So yeah, but you're sweating. It's hot in there. The light is reflecting off of the sweat, so you're not absorbing nearly enough of it to be effective. So although the idea of a full spectrum sauna is cool, you might as well just stick with the mid and far, or just the far infrared wavelengths that create that heat.
So I didn't realize that sweat actually will interfere with the absorption of certain spectrums of light.
Well, it'll because when we're talking about red, near infrared, the wavelengths are much shorter. The longer the wavelengths go, all the way to where we get to like radio waves, we can, those will travel through mountains and through buildings. But like red, near infrared, I can't have my shirt on and it's not going to penetrate my shirt. If I have lotions on my face, a lot of the light's not going to penetrate. It's just going to get absorbed or reflected from the lotions. So the same goes with sweat. So the best thing is just to have clean, dry skin before you do light. So I can do the light and then I can jump in the sauna. That's fine. But I don't want to do it the other way around. And I don't want to do it together.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think one of the more important discussions we'll have now, before we get into like the practical use cases and everything, and like how to best use it, is the benefits and the reasons people, like the testimonials you're hearing. And of course, this is not any medical claims, but what are you seeing as like the main benefits, outcomes, use cases for light therapy and photobiomodulation?
The two ones that I really like that I hear a lot of is it improves mood. And we know that that's an easy one because people who, whether it's from anxiety, depression, all the way up to Alzheimer's and dementia, is there's inflammation in the brain. One of the biggest things that light does is when it increases ATP energy, is it creates an anti-inflammatory effect. So that's part one. Two, vasodilation. So when we have the lymphatics for the brain, if we can create vasodilation, open up those vessels, it helps to drain toxicities from the brain as well. Anything dealing with inflammation is going to be beneficial, whether it's acute. So there's a reason why a lot of professional athletes are using light. So they're using it to reduce injury, lower inflammation in between workouts so they can work out more regularly. And they're doing it for vasodilation because it actually increases oxygen to their muscles so they can exert themselves harder. And this is all through science that has shown this as well. Another good thing is light balances. So whether you're hyper or hypo, it's going to bring them even. So that could be men that are low in testosterone, men dealing with erectile dysfunction, teenagers dealing with really difficult cramping, women that are dealing with infertility type issues. So much of that is situated around not just hormones, but hormones our mood, as well as our toxicities. These are the things that light has really, really helped people out, and it can be as simple as helping you manage. You know, I tell people this, whether it's an autoimmune issue or depression. You know what? We're not curing things. We just want to manage. We just want to wake up in the morning and not be like, oh, here's my problem. This is the first thing I'm thinking about is this issue that I'm dealing with. And we don't want it to be the last thing when you put your head on your pillow to be thinking about. So can red light really help inflammatory type issues? Absolutely. It can be a game changer, or it can be just helping us manage to get through the day a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't mention anything around sleep or energy levels.
Yeah, well, when we talk about mood, let me go back a step. When you don't have sleep, you're not going to be in a good mood. So when I say you're in a better mood, it's because it balances their circadian rhythm. It helps to balance the melatonin, the serotonin, helps to balance the dopamine as well. So certainly, if someone's not sleeping well, so let's talk about people who want to lose weight. There's studies that have showed statistically significant weight loss with light. There's a big difference between research statistically significant and real life. When we look in the mirror, what is significant? People want a quick out. That's not where light's going to happen. So when we talk about weight loss, I talk about, okay, how is it going to help you with weight loss? If it can allow you to exercise and push yourself harder, great. If it allows you to exercise more frequently because of the healing process of light, the reduction in inflammation, if it helps you to sleep better, your mood is going to be better. You're going to be more likely to not just push yourself, but you're going to be in a better mood that's going to keep you from craving some of those foods that you know you should not be eating, if that helps out.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. I saw some of that same research on light therapy and weight loss, and I was certainly a bit skeptical that it could actually translate into a noticeable difference, even if the results in this study were significant or were statistically significant.
Right.
And then also one of the big popular use cases for it is around beauty and aesthetics. What do you know about red light therapy and general light therapy on the hair, skin, nails, all of that?
So when we talk about skin, we're talking about collagen, fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are increased when there's an increase in ATP production. So it's another one of those things like, okay, will it help reduce fine lines, wrinkles? Yes. Will it help just to maybe slow the process down? Yes. Is it going to make you look 10 years younger? No. So I don't market my stuff to say, hey, wrinkles. That's just not my thing. I'm more focused on deeper type issues, but certainly it can help. So why not? We're all vain. Let's be real. Hair, absolutely. Not just red and near infrared, but also blue has been shown to help with, again, would we all like to have a full head of hair? Absolutely. Is that going to happen for everyone? No. So for a lot of people, it may be just slow the process down. Maybe halt the process. Yes, certain people will start to see new hair grow in, which is great. But it's not something that I am going to ever promise to someone. But yeah, same with nails. Healthier, stronger nails is going to be a factor of increased cellular response, increased ATP production.
And a little below the surface, what about wounds? Do you see anything with injuries and cuts, scrapes, bruises, that kind of stuff healing, repairing faster with light?
Oh yeah, dramatically. Yeah. So again, we talked about like herpetic lesions. We know that in the dental field, shingles, any kind of cuts or scrapes, burns. I don't know why they don't have light in every burn clinic. Bed wounds. We see that a lot of in nursing homes or quadriplegic. I had a friend that I sent a little small torch to. His father's a quadriplegic, always deals with bed sore issues, has had a few sores that have been around literally for 3 to 4 years that would never heal up. Within a month of doing pulsed light, red and near infrared, they were all almost completely healed within literally, I think, a 3-4 week period of time, and have not come back since. So blue is antibacterial. It creates excessive reactive oxygen species, which is great to help to kill bacteria or viruses or other types of pathogens. Then you have the red and the near infrared, which increasing ATP production, vasodilation, more oxygen. That's the key. You get more oxygen to that area, you're going to see a dramatic increase in healing.
I'm just thinking all the things you can combine with it, like either peptides or ozone for more oxygenation, or nootropics, like methylene blue is a big one that people often combine with red light therapy and photobiomodulation in general. Are there any combinations or stacks that you like?
Methylene blue is a big one. That's something that you can actually put right on the wound itself. Or you can ingest it, or you can do it through IV. Methylene blue is photosensitive to the red light, so it'll actually penetrate deeper in through the tissue when red light gets absorbed into it. So when we talk about stacking, I like the word hormesis. Hormesis is acute stressors on the body. So acute stressors can be anything from red light, infrared sauna, cold plunges, exercise, breath work, fasting. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Acute stressors that make our body stronger. The simple way that it's doing it is I just brought up reactive oxygen species. We used to think that that was a bad thing. So when we have acute stress, we release reactive oxygen species. They then signal back to the mitochondria and say, hey guys, we're under stress. Get your ass in gear. So mitochondria will then grow bigger. They will populate. They will produce more ATP energy. Hence why, if you're a couch potato, you're not going to get up and run a marathon, but you could probably walk a half mile. And then eventually you can start to jog a half mile, and then a mile, and then 5, and then 10, and eventually work your way up to a marathon. That's how the body is reacting to acute stresses. So that's the same thing. So I tell people, as much as you can, try to get a couple of those in a day, whether that's going to be your light and breath work, your light and sauna, a cold plunge and exercise, doing an intermittent fasting and doing breath holding. You've got to combine all these things in to be really, really optimal with your health.
Yeah. And especially it's important if you're adding more hormetic stressors to get your whole stress bucket, your allostatic load in general, because while there's a lot of like benefits to each of those practices, if you're starving yourself, you're eating at sporadic times, you're crushing really long, hard workouts, your hormone levels and the total stress you're under might do more harm than good. In those cases, you're better off like skipping some of the really intense stuff, getting your stress under control, and then waiting until you're in a better state to add them back in.
Yeah. Well, like if you think of someone with chronic fatigue syndrome, they're not going to go out and exercise. But can they get some light? Absolutely. Can they do a sauna? Probably not. But can they do some breath work? Absolutely. So you have to start where your body is at that time, and then you can build. It's no different when light. When someone is first starting with light, I don't say just jump in and do your 15 minutes. I say start at 2 minutes or start further away, because that light can be too much for the body all at once. If your lymphatic system is stagnant and your body is trying to pull toxins out, but it's got nowhere to go, you're going to create a Herx response. It's not a bad thing, but you're going to have a little headache. You're going to feel a little bit, fluish for a day. It's a good sign. It says your body's trying, but it needs to just take things a little bit slower.
Yeah, the ancient system of Ayurveda, which is at least 5,000 years old, mentions sun gazing and to only do it during certain times of the day, the first like 15 to 20 minutes when the UV index is 0. But then they also recommended to only start with 15 seconds and to slowly work your way up over time, adding another 15 seconds per day until you work your way up to minutes at a time, 10 minutes. But I always wonder, like, this seems ridiculous. It seems ridiculous to start so low and slow, like just 15 seconds at a time. And this is probably the exact reason why they advocated starting low and slow.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, so I am now convinced that I need to do more red light exposure and photobiomodulation in addition to the sunlight I already get, because I get lots of it. But what is the best way to incorporate it into your lifestyle? You mentioned sitting in front of it, and if you expose your shins to it more, you're going to increase your stem cell proliferation. What about, like, I guess for athletes, for people, like, do I take it before workout, after workout, early in the morning, in the evening? What do you see as the best protocol to implement light therapy?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because everyone is a little bit different. And the last thing I want is for someone to feel like, oh, I have to get it in the morning. And if I don't, then there's no point. So I tell people, do light with your schedule. So, ideally, if you can get up and do it in the morning, because it's great for your eyes, anywhere between like 6 and 9 a.m., because that's when the mitochondria is most active. So I like to do mine in the morning. Other people like to do it in the evening because it really helps them sleep. Athletes are going to do it about 2 hours prior to whatever workout they're doing. Right? Because that's how long it takes for that nitric. You got anywhere between immediately to about 2 hours is where you have that nitric oxide and that vasodilation release. Athletes could do it right after as well to help reduce the inflammation. But once you start doing it daily or 4 times or 5 times a week, it doesn't leave you when you're done. Light will actually continue to work in your body from anywhere from 48 to 72 hours.
Wow.
So it's like an immediate spike, and then it starts to go down, down, down. Okay, here's day 2. Here's another spike. Down, down, down. Here's day 3. So it piggybacks on the previous one. So it's not like you necessarily have to plan out when you're getting the light, because it's going to stay in your system and still be effective 24, 48, up to 72 hours later.
Very interesting. So how do you go about actually deciding how long to do a session? Like, does it change if you're pulsing, and does it change based on your health status or your activity levels or your sun exposure?
It's kind of like your vitamin D levels. They can change daily. So, one day you may technically need more light, than another day. Or you may need more, vitamin C one day, not so much the next day. So I try to keep people from being too dogmatic about light. You get to a point where it's just, yes, let's start off, work slow, let's build up to about 15 minutes, about 12 inches away. That's giving the correct amount of joules to the cells that we know through studies have a very beneficial effect. All right. So we can stick with that and be completely fine. But I tell people, once you start doing it for a while, start to use your intuition. So you could be in front of that light and say you've got it set for 15 minutes and 10 minutes goes by and you're like, you know what? I'm good. I feel all right. I feel good. You're good. If you did it for 15 minutes and you're like, I'm liking this light. It feels good. I want to do a few more minutes. Do a few more minutes. It's going to be completely fine with you. There's just some people that they think more is better. And again, it's like anything else. You're going to get into that sauna. More is not going to be better. There's a certain aspect where it's good, and then it starts to become either unhealthy or you lose the benefits. So there is a point where you can get too much light. A good analogy, you got a potted plant. You want to water that. You don't want to just do drip, 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 but you don't want to dump a bucket on it. And you don't want to keep on watering it because the soil can only absorb so much water before the rest of it will just run off or it'll drown it. So the body, the cells work similar. We want to saturate the cells, but we don't want to overdo it.
Is it necessary for me to rotate when I'm in front of the panel, like after 5 minutes, 7.5 minutes, whatever it is, to flip around?
So you want to be able to do enough to get the correct amount of joules on the tissue that's facing that light. So I will do 15 minutes on my front side. Now, I could be that could be all I need to do, say on Monday. And then Tuesday, I may do 15 minutes on my back side and just alternate those. Now, if I wanted to spend 30 minutes in front of the light, I can do 15 minutes on my front side and then turn around and do 15 minutes on my back side. Again, the more we can get the light actually to the cells, the better. And then the systemic effect is just kind of gravy on the top.
Are there any more like advanced things people can do? I mean, I know that it's most important just to get your session in and be consistent. But say I want to mobilize stem cells or increase the production of stem cells, I could apply it to my shins or focus on my shins, put them a little closer. And like if I want to stimulate gamma brainwaves, I can put it closer to my head. Are there any other places that you see work especially well for different goals?
Well, you don't have to place it closer to anything. Again, it's red is only going to penetrate so far, regardless of the time and the power, because it's absorbed in the blood. Near infrared is only going to penetrate so far. So I don't have to overdo that. And the body prefers lower and slower. So instead of having a high-powered device and just slapping it right on my face and doing it for 30 seconds, that could give me the correct amount of joules, but the body doesn't like that much power all at once because it's not natural. We are trying to get a little bit closer to natural. So yeah, if the one good thing with like large panels is it takes a lot of the thought out of it. Okay, strip down, I can get anywhere from my toes up to the top of my head if it's large enough. Or I just need to move it around. If I had a smaller device, let's say I was going to say for your male listeners, but really for your female listeners as well. Let's say you had erectile dysfunction. Your first thought is, I'm going to put light on the balls. Great, do that. That's going to help increase testosterone. But what if it's a blood issue? What if we're not getting enough vasodilation? So we need to hit the blood supply to that area. What if it's a nerve issue? Okay, I need to put light on my lower back to all the nerves that innervate the penis. I need to put light on my stomach to reduce my anxiety. I need to put light on my head to help me sleep better, to give me a better mood. So with a large device, again, it takes out a lot of the guesswork. If we had smaller devices, then yes, I'm going to be very specific on where I want you to put that light.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Scott, we will start to wind down. This is one of those subjects that I'm sure we could chat about for hours, but we got limited time today. So if people are interested in connecting with you, in trying some of your pulsing best-in-class LightpathLED panels, how do they go about getting in contact with you?
So the website is lightpathled.com. I also have a Facebook group, so you can just search Red Light Therapy for Beginners. And that's a great way for people, whether you have my light or someone else's, or you're interested in getting light, that's a place where you can ask questions. You can get responses either from me or from other people that have been part of the community. So you get their knowledge, what's helped them out as well. So that's really a great way to learn and understand light better without going down that crazy rabbit hole of trying to find research.
And you were generous enough to give my audience a special discount. I think the code is URBAN. Do you know what that saves them?
It's going to save them 10%, and that'll be for 1 week.
Sweet. Thanks for setting that up. I'll put all this in the show notes with the links to everything we've discussed. And now we'll go into a quick rapid fire round. Are you ready?
Okay, go.
What 3 teachers have had the biggest impact on your life and work?
Nelson Marquina, doctor in Virginia, really opened my eyes to light. Kay Aubrey, Photopuncture in Arizona, amazing. Kevin Stanley, 5th grade, he was awesome.
Beautiful. Okay. If someone wants to get started and they don't have the budget yet for a premium LightPath LED panel, how can they start implementing light into their lives at home?
Yeah, get what you can afford. Okay? Yes, it would be nice to get the best in everything. It'd be nice to get the best customer support, all that, but get what you can afford. We do have a Pro series that is more budget friendly for people. It doesn't have the pulsing, doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it gets people started. And that's the key. Get started.
Okay, Scott, what is one thing the LightPath LED tribe does not know about you?
I don't think that they know that I also own a campground. Eventually, what I'm going to do is try to bring my wellness center into the campground so that people can come in and get their light, get their sauna, get their cold plunge, get their yoga, get their meditation, and they can stay with us for a weekend or a week. And we're surrounded by nothing but cows and corn. So it is about as peaceful a place as you can find.
Wow. That sounds like that will be the first of its kind.
I think so, yeah.
And I'm a bit envious of you. I'm guessing you get a ton of natural light exposure in addition to your red light by virtue of owning a campground.
During the 2 months where it's warm enough in upstate New York.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of the time, it's cold, it's gray, it's dreary, it's sad. I need to go down south more frequently.
Well, Scott Kennedy, thanks for joining me today. It's been fun chatting about light and opening my eyes to some myths and misconceptions I had around it and how to easily put it into our lifestyles.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Nick, for having me.
Until next time, I'm Nick Urban here with Scott Kennedy, signing out from mindbodypeak.com. Have a great week and be an outlier. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.